Hi, everybody. My name is Carolyn Ellis, and I'm an abstract artist. I live right here in Duncanville. I'm 70 years old, and I started painting when I was 62. Today, I'm going to tell you my story. How did I end up starting to paint, and how did it become such a big part of my life? See that wagging tail? That's one of our dogs. Uh, we all love dogs, right? Okay, so how did it happen? Well, it's kind of an odd story, and it's sort of long. So if you want to get something to eat or drink, you need to go to the bathroom, this is the time to do it. Put this on pause and come on back and jump in. So here's how art came into my life. I was a teenager, actually, when I first decided, you know what, I'm going to buy some paints and brushes and see what happens. Now, I never tried to paint anything that looked like a house or a tree, a dog, a flower. I went to abstract art right from the beginning, which means I was always drawn to playing with color and shapes, not to making it look like the real world that we live in. Now, I enjoyed painting as soon as I started it. It had nothing to do with school. I bought these things on my own, and I had great fun from time to time. It was what you would call a hobby, and I went back to it from time to time, and I continued to do that into my 20s. So once a month, once every 6 weeks, I would get out my paints and whatever I was gonna canvas board or a canvas and paint. Then I got married, and for the next 40 years, I didn't paint at all. When we moved from the Washington, D.C. area, which is where I'm from, I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. And then my husband and I moved to the Dallas Metroplex in 1995 when he got a job. I can't say I was too happy about leaving our life, our family, our friends, our whole past, but we did, and I quickly adjusted to Texas and learned to love it right off the bat. Friendly people, warm weather, no more terrible winters. It has been a wonderful place. So we moved in 95, but in 2002, my husband and our children, we have 6 children, one was in college by 2002, but there were 5 at home. And so those 5 children and my husband, they got it in their idea, let's move to the country. So we did. We moved on to 26 acres with a house in the Cedar Creek Lake area, which is about 60 miles southeast of Dallas. Now, our church was still back in the Dallas area, immediate Dallas area. And my husband's work, he was moving out there meant a 60-mile drive one way to work. He was okay with that. So when we moved, my whole life changed. I had no idea we were changing cultures. You know, what do I know about hunting or drag racing or bowling or hunting? I mean, I didn't know anything about those things. Fishing. Oh, fishing was huge. We moved into a fishing community, Cedar Creek Lake. Okay, so it was a whole different culture. And for me, the only place that I knew to go to there was Walmart. There wasn't anything else. So and that was 20 minutes or more away, 17 miles. In the city, to drive 17 miles would take 45 minutes. In the country, it's 20 minutes because there's so few stoplights and you're going quite fast. All right, so with no place to go, I basically went inside. I started playing the piano again. We didn't even have a piano at that point, but we bought a used piano and I started playing hours a day. I'd always loved the piano, but it had gone to the side, so to speak. We not only had a larger family, but we homeschooled them. So they were there with me 24 hours a day until they got older. And so I had to do something with my mind. And what I did was pretty much, I call it going inside of myself. Okay, so I recovered playing the piano. I went back to playing the guitar. I hadn't played the guitar in 40 years. And I bought a guitar. I still remembered all my chords, and I enjoyed playing the guitar. I went back to writing. I've always enjoyed writing. And I started doing that, a lot. In particular, I started writing about our transition from the city to the country. And believe it or not, there were small magazines that took what I wrote. I didn't get paid for it, but I was writing really to develop my own thoughts about that move. So eventually, I went back to painting, which, as I mentioned, I had done in my 20s. Now, I was in my 20s in the 70s. Okay, so again, it had been over 40 years. So I bought some acrylic paints and some canvases, and I started painting. And what a shock. Now, previously, in my youth, I saw painting as a hobby. It was something fun to do when there was nothing else at hand, so to speak. But when I started painting in my 60s, this would be 2012, I was 62. When I started painting this time, I was shocked by what came out. It was dramatic, it was bold, it seemed to me to just grab me. It got a response from me. And it wasn't long at all before I started painting every day. And 6 months later, I had 50 paintings easily. The only reason I didn't have more is because if I didn't like what I painted over it. So sometimes there'd be 2 and 3 paintings on one canvas. So with these 50 paintings, the next thing that came to my mind was, I want to have an art show. Now, as I said, at the time, we're living on a house with 26 acres outside a town of 1,000. Now, you can imagine how much interest there is in abstract art in a small rural town. 0. Okay, so I had to find a small town out in that area. That problem was solved by the fact that our children went to Trinity Valley Community College in Athens. Athens has a population of 12,000. It has a community college. It's an old town by Texas standards, over 100 years. Actually, I don't think it is 100 years. I think it only goes back to like the 30s. But it had culture. It was founded by wealthy people, and so music and the arts were part of Athens from the very beginning. They had an arts center where performances took place, plays, and that had been around for over 40 years. And music as well. Music and arts were part of Athens history, and they are to this day. So, what do you know? Directly across the street from Trinity Valley Community College, there was a coffee shop. So I approached the owner and I asked, could I have an art show here? Could I bring like 30 paintings and put them all over the walls and have a show? Well, lo and behold, they said yes. It was 2 people who owned that coffee shop at the time. So I got my first show, and I sold 3 or 4 pieces, which was just very exciting, very exciting. I don't think I've ever sold 4 pieces at a show again. So it wasn't long, but after that, I'm thinking, well, I want to get my artwork out in more places. And I succeeded in doing that in that town. Athens had an interest and an openness. So a year later, and I rented a studio space. Now, I made sure that the studio space, well, first of all, it's affordable because this is a small town. So that was great. And the second thing is, I made sure that I was close to something, the space I was renting, that it was close to the number one, very close, to the number one cafe in the town. Okay, so people lined up to get in there. This place is so popular, it still is, that they only open at 11 o'clock and they close at 2 o'clock, and they're not open on Saturday and Sunday. Railway Cafe, okay, in Athens. Okay, the place was the bomb, and my studio was a stone's throw from there. So, of course, my hope is that my people, so to speak, those who might be interested in abstract art, they were eating in that cafe. And I sold a fair amount of work to those people, so to speak. Okay, so this is when I got that studio, my life changed. In fact, my life changed when I started making abstract art. I was happy. Now, of course, I hadn't been miserable before I painted, but a new joy filled my heart, not just when I was painting, but all the time. I didn't even realize this at first, but it made me happier. And so I was smiling more and more joyful and more relaxed. And my husband noticed it, and our children noticed it, and my friends noticed it. And so I began to notice it. So what happened is that painting made me happy, and then happiness changed my life because it changed my relationships. I was happier with every aspect of my life. Even the dogs must have noticed that I was happier. So this was a very big deal. Something else that happened for me when I got that first studio is I got my first smartphone. So I got rid of my small little flip phone, the kind of old technology phone, which is still out there, which has the numbers and then 3 letters assigned to each number. So if you want to text on it, which you can do, it's quite a bit of trouble. The pictures are very poor quality, but you could, if you wanted to, take pictures. Okay, so I used to call it a granny phone, so I had a granny phone. But once I got my studio, I decided I want to connect with social media. Thankfully, we still had children living at home at the time. This was all happening. In fact, we had four children living at home. And one of our daughters, she had the same phone that I bought. In fact, I bought a smartphone that was the same as hers for this very reason. So she could show me how to operate it. And when I say operate it, I don't just mean how to make phone calls. She taught me how to get on social media, how to create a Facebook page, how to get on Instagram, how to email, how to attach a picture to anything that I want to send out, how to text, how to cut and paste. So amongst people my age, senior citizens, they think I'm a pro. So when I text, I use 2 fingers. Oh, so my friends look at me and say, wow. But you know what? A 6-year-old, I mean, very young children know so much more about smartphones than I do. But it did change my life. All of technology was clearly going to pass me by. I needed a phone to make phone calls. So why would I get into, all the other technology that's out there? Well, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to let technology pass you by. I'm just saying that for me, because of making art, I got a smartphone and I'm into technology. So I not only can post online, but I can look at other people's artwork and see what they're doing and get inspiration from them. And not only that, but I get other people's response to my artwork and to what I write. I still love to write. So I have a blog and people read that, and that's a wonderful, and they make comments. And so it's like having an online family in a way. Now, if you're interested in that, you can go to my Facebook page, Carolyn Ellis Art, or you can go to my website, carolynellisart.com. And you can find out all sorts of stuff about me and see lots more of my artwork. Okay, so let's pick up the story here. So I'm happier, and that is a wonderful thing. And it truly did affect all of my relationships. Now, when I first started painting, it was because it was fun. I didn't know that there was anything beyond fun. I knew this is what I want to do, and I'm happy doing it, and so let's do more, okay? But what I didn't know is that I would start thinking and reflecting. For instance, even though I loved abstract art, I had to ask myself right from the beginning, uh, is there any value to abstract art at all? Isn't it just blobs of color and odd shapes thrown up on a canvas? I didn't want to do something meaningless. I wanted something purposeful that had not just some meaning, but some profoundness, some real truth to it. So I stumbled around with that question for a month or two. And here's what I found. You know what? Life has no meaning at all unless we find meaning, unless we give life a purpose. It doesn't have one. So for a lot of people, life comes down to have a party and then you die and it's all over. So the point of life is just keep having a party, because you can't have a party once you're rotting in the soil, because that's the end of you. Okay, so you're born, you die, and in between you have a lot of fun. Well, now, I never went along with that. As I was raised in a home with Christian values, so I grew up with the concept of God and eternal life. And as an adult, that has become a central part of my life. So I have most definitely found meaning to my life. Well, abstract art is exactly the same way. The truth is, of course, abstract paintings, they are just blobs of paint. That's the truth. But as human beings, it's in our nature to try and make sense of them. And so that helped me a lot. So the only meaning an abstract painting has is the one that the viewer gives it. I don't give it meaning for you. You find the meaning for you. So that was a very important lesson for me to learn. Another lesson that I had to deal with is, but what if no one buys my artwork? And especially, look at the painting behind me. It's 6 feet, it's 6 feet by 12 feet. Who on earth is going to buy a painting that's 6 feet by 12 feet? Very few people. But you know what? I'm not painting for other people. I'm painting for me. And now that we don't live in the country, we moved to Duncanville in 2018. I have been finding places to display my artwork, and I have met with a number of people who have been delighted by my artwork. One thing I like to say about being an artist is that it's never cloudy in our house because we're covered with bright color. And so that's another aspect that I didn't realize, that color in and of itself, without any relationship to trees or faces or fruit or whatever, color just by itself is powerful. And this painting behind me, this is the first time I've used that much green. In fact, I hardly use green at all. I mean, I probably have 60 or 70 paintings, and maybe 2 have a little bit of green in them. For some reason, I decided this time I'm going big. Now, this is why I decided to do this. This is a small, chunky cardboard book. And I like to do this. It doesn't have to be this small. Sometimes I go, this is 4 inches by 4 inches. I take my markers and I just do a painting on each page. And up until recently, I saw this as just something to do in the evening when I'm watching a show or a movie or something. I didn't look at it as this is something valuable and important to me. But you know what? Oops, I haven't finished. There we go. So this is the last one I've done in here. I'm still working on this book. But when I painted this one, and here's another one. This is another small little book. When I painted this one, I knew I want to turn these into big paintings. So the painting behind me, it's of this. I'm not finished yet. I ran out of green and I haven't added all the different elements yet. But I discovered that when I do small work, it doesn't mean it's less important at all. Now, for years, I did look at it that way. I looked at my small pieces as just fun and enjoyable. I didn't look at it as full of meaning and depth. This one I do. Like I said, I'm not finished with it. So we started with our family moving to the country, and that's where I went inside of myself to recover interests that I had from my youth. And I stumbled onto painting in 2012 and quickly realized this is where I want to go. And it's been a life changer for me because oddly enough, if you look at this painting, what on earth is that? That's a question for you to answer. But I have found that I'm discovering things about myself. Why do I like big, bold colors? And why am I attracted to painting large? Now, I have a lot of paintings that aren't this big, but I'm particularly attracted to painting huge. And the next time, I'll talk about why bold colors, why huge, and just exactly what am I learning about myself from abstract art. But for today, I think this is enough. Once I fell into painting, I found something hugely valuable to me. Now, the point here isn't go get some brushes and paints and start painting. No, but the point could be, what did you used to do that you loved to do? And maybe you forgot that you loved to do it. I forgot that I ever painted. I forgot that I ever used to play the guitar. You know, that it was moving to the country that I had to come up with my own way of living because there was peace and quiet, beautiful peace and quiet. But we were so far away from people and things that I had to create a new life for myself. So there we go. I hope there's some food for thought for you, and we'll be talking again soon. So long.